Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive into the Delano grape strike. We're looking at an episode of the American History Tellers podcast, and this story, man, it's incredible.
Oh, it's
This
fascinating.
is a story about a group of farm workers
Right.
taking on the most powerful forces in agriculture and winning.
It is.
So we're going to unpack how they did it, who the key players were, and what kind of tactics they used to pull it off.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. And it all starts, in 1965 in Delano, California.
Okay.
So you've got rolling vineyards and abundant harvests, but behind it all, you've got the farm workers
Right.
just trying to make ends meet.
Yeah.
They've got low wages, tough living conditions.
Right. Yeah.
It was just a powder keg ready to ignite.
Yeah, and it's not just about wages, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's about worker representation and...
Yeah, there were two rival unions actually vying for members.
Oh, really?
You had the Filipino-led Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, that's AWOC, and the predominantly Mexican-American National Farm Workers Association, the NFWA.
Okay.
And this is led by Cesar Chavez.
Chavez, yeah. So he's a fascinating figure, right?
He is.
He's got this strategic mind, almost like a chess player.
I think that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
He knew that to build a strong union, it takes time, it takes patience.
Yeah.
So he focused on these smaller victories first.
Yeah.
Like the rose grafter strike.
The rose set?
Workers who would graft roses onto rootstock, they would
Yeah.
refuse to work.
I see.
And then there was a rent strike against this subpar housing provided by the growers.
Okay.
So, these wins built momentum,
Yeah.
showed workers the power of collective action.
Right. Okay, so he's building up the NFWA, right?
Right.
But then things get kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Tell me about Guber Padilla.
Okay.
What happened at Rancho Blanco?
So Padilla, he was one of the NFWA leaders. He witnesses some pretty bad worker abuse at this farm called Rancho Blanco, and he calls for a strike.
Oh, wow.
And this puts Chavez in a tough spot. He's known for his calculated approach, but now he's facing pressure from within his own ranks to take bolder action.
It's like a test of his leadership.
Exactly.
He says he cave.
He does, but it's not a simple decision.
Right.
And you can really sense this tension between Chavez's cautious style and Padilla's, more impulsive move.
Right.
But ultimately, he supports the strike.
Okay.
But it's a turning point.
Sure.
Things are escalating quickly.
Yeah, and then to make it even more complicated, AWC, the rival union, launches their own grape strike
Exactly.
in Delano around the same time.
At the same time.
Talk about pressure.
Right.
So now Chavez is facing pressure from both within his organization and from a competing union.
Exactly.
He realizes he can't stay on the sidelines.
He can't.
So on September 20, 1965,
1965.
the NFWA joins the strike, sending 200 of their members to the picket line.
Wow.
I mean, can you imagine that scene?
Oh, yeah.
Hundreds of workers standing up to these powerful growers.
Absolutely.
That's got to be intense.
It was, and the growers didn't take this lying down.
Of course not.
They used intimidation tactics. They used strike breakers,
Oh, wow.
even pesticide spray trucks
Really?
to try and break the strike. It was a dangerous situation.
Yeah, but Chavez was committed to nonviolence, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
I know he drew inspiration from Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, he saw nonviolence not just as a moral principle, but also as a strategic advantage.
Okay.
He understood in the context of the civil rights movement, peaceful protests could really win over public opinion.
Yeah.
And this is where his tactical brilliance comes in.
Okay.
He starts using these creative, almost unexpected strategies.
Like what? Give me an example. What are we talking about?
Well, one of the most striking is his collaboration with Father Keith Kenny.
Okay.
He was a priest and a pilot.
A priest and a pilot.
And they would fly over the vineyards, airdropping flyers, and broadcasting messages of resistance directly to the workers.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's like a scene out of a movie.
So he's taking inspiration from the civil rights movement.
Right.
But I've also heard that he drew ideas from some pretty unexpected sources, like Mao Zedong's Long March.
Yeah.
That seems like a little bit of a leap.
It does, but Chavez saw these parallels, between the Long March and its endurance, and the need for the farm workers to sustain their own movement over a long period.
Right.
And, he also admired the march's ability to garner public support and how it became a symbol of resilience.
So he's adapting these ideas to the American context, taking what works and making it his own.
Exactly.
What else did he do to keep the pressure on the growers?
Well, he wasn't afraid to use dramatic tactics.
Oh, really?
He would stage arrests of picketers, including his own wife, Helen,
Wow.
to garner media attention and public sympathy.
That's taking a risk.
It is, but it worked.
Yeah.
You know, they were keeping the strike in the public eye, and they were starting to shift the narrative in their favor.
So as winter approaches, though, the strike starts to lose momentum.
It does.
You know, cold weather's making picketing difficult, and workers are struggling financially.
Yeah.
Chavez knows he needs a new strategy,
He does.
a way to maintain the pressure on the growers.
Right.
And that's when he comes up with this brilliant idea, a consumer boycott.
Yeah.
A boycott. Who does he target?
His target was Schenley Industries, a major grower with a vulnerable spot, their popular liquor brands.
Interesting.
And to spread the boycott message nationwide, he partners with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, a key player in the civil rights movement.
Smart.
Yeah.
He's leveraging the power of another movement to
Absolutely.
amplify his message.
Exactly. SNCC had this national network of activists, a lot of experience with boycotts.
Okay.
This partnership allowed the Delano Grape Strike message to reach a much wider audience.
So he's got this boycott going,
Right.
but he's not done yet, right?
No.
Tell me about the march to Sacramento.
So this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Chavez, inspired by the civil rights movement, comes up with this bold plan, a 300-mile march. Wow.
A pilgrimage from Delano to Sacramento, the state capital.
Okay.
And he times it to coincide with Lent, you know, incorporating religious imagery and language and blending Mexican culture with this fight for social justice.
So it's more than just a march. It's a symbolic act.
Precisely.
Capture the nation's attention.
Exactly. And to solidify the movement's goals.
Okay.
He commissions Luis Valdez, this young playwright, to write the plan of Delano.
Okay.
This document that outlines the farm workers' demands in clear, powerful language.
So they're setting off on this incredible journey with a clear message and a powerful symbol.
Yes.
What happened next?
Well, on March 17, 1966, the march begins. But in a dramatic twist, Chavez changes the planned route at the last minute,
Oh, wow.
leading to a face-off with police.
That sounds tense.
It was picture this farm workers led by Chavez kneeling in prayer in front of a police blockade.
Wow.
It was a powerful image that immediately grabbed the attention of the media.
Okay, I'm hooked.
We're going to have to pause here, but in part 2, we'll pick up the story, see how this march plays out if it achieves its goals, if it forces the growers to negotiate. Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back. Last time we left off with Chavez and the farm workers kneeling in prayer in front of a police blockade.
Right. A powerful moment
It really was.
that captured the nation's attention.
Yeah.
And as the march continued, you know, it gained even more momentum. More people joined the ranks. Media coverage intensified, and the pressure on the growers kept building.
So all those creative tactics that Chavez was using, the airdrops, the staged arrests, the partnership with SNCC, they were starting to pay off.
Oh, absolutely. And don't forget about that consumer boycott they launched against Schenley Industries. It was really starting to hit them where it hurt their bottom line.
Yeah.
Schenley was seeing a significant drop in sales, especially for those liquor brands.
Oh, yeah.
All the negative publicity was becoming a real problem.
So did they finally crack under the pressure? Did they come to the negotiating table?
They did actually while the march was still going on.
Wow.
Schenley reached out to Chavez and agreed to negotiate.
Really?
It was a huge win for the farm workers.
Yeah.
A validation of their efforts and a sign that their tactics were working.
What a morale boost for the marchers, though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine walking for weeks, enduring hardship, and then getting this news that one of the biggest growers is ready to talk.
Right. It gave them a renewed sense of purpose and energy.
Yeah.
And the timing couldn't have been better because just 6 days after Schenley agrees to negotiate, the marchers arrive in Sacramento on Easter Sunday, 1966, greeted by over 8,000 supporters.
That's incredible.
A truly triumphant moment.
The classic David and Goliath story, right?
Yeah.
These farm workers often overlooked and underestimated.
Right.
They took on a powerful industry and won a major victory.
They did, and they didn't stop there.
Really?
Within 60 days of that agreement,
Okay.
Schenley Industries signed a contract with the NFWA, the first union contract ever won by Chavez's organization.
That's amazing.
That contract included wage increases and official recognition of the union.
That's landmark.
It is.
But was this the end of the fight? I mean, were all the growers ready to follow Schenley's lead?
Unfortunately, no. There were still over 30 other growers in Delano who hadn't budged,
Oh, wow.
including the biggest one of them all, the DiGiorgio Corporation.
So even with this victory, Chavez knew that the battle was far from over.
Right.
What was DiGiorgio's reaction to all of this?
Well, the DiGiorgio Corporation was led by Robert DiGiorgio,
Okay.
and he was watching all these developments very closely.
Yeah.
You know, they saw what happened to Shenley and decided to take a different approach.
Okay.
Instead of resisting the union outright, they tried to kind of outmaneuver Chavez.
How so? What did they do?
They invited the Teamsters Union,
Oh, what?
which was known for being more management friendly to represent their workers.
Okay.
A classic divide and conquer strategy,
Right.
hoping to create a rivalry between the unions and weaken the farm workers' bargaining power.
That's a clever tactic. Playing one union against another, did it work?
It almost did. The Teamsters, with DiGiorgio's backing, they held a union election amongst the farm workers, and they won, although many workers following Chavez's instructions chose not to vote.
Oh, wow.
But Chavez wasn't about to give up.
Right.
She challenged the legitimacy of the election,
Okay.
arguing that the Teamsters had used intimidation tactics, and with the help of some political allies, he managed to get a new election scheduled.
Okay, so now Chavez is facing a new challenge.
Right.
A rival union with deep pockets of powerful connections.
Right.
How did he respond?
He knew he couldn't afford to split the vote and risk losing again.
Yeah.
So he made a bold and unexpected move. He decided to merge his NFWA with the rival union, the Filipino-led AWOC.
Okay.
Together, they formed a new, more powerful union, the United Farm Workers Organizing Committee, UFWOC.
That's a game changer.
It was.
Joining forces with their former rivals must have been a difficult decision, but strategically it makes sense.
It was a brilliant move. It unified the farm workers and presented a united front against the growers, and it paid off.
Yeah.
In the new election, the UFWOC won the right to represent the DiGiorgio workers.
That's amazing.
Another huge victory for Chavez and the farm workers.
It seems like they are gaining momentum and winning key battles, but I imagine the growers weren't going down without a fight.
Oh, you're absolutely right. The fight was far from over, but now Chavez had a much stronger union.
Yeah.
The financial backing of the AFL-CIO and a proven track record of success.
So what was his next move? Did he target another specific grower?
He decided to go bigger.
Okay.
He set his sights on expanding the boycott nationwide,
Wow.
targeting all California grapes.
Okay.
Not just those from a single grower. He knew that to truly achieve his goals, he needed to hit the entire industry.
That's incredibly ambitious.
It is.
It's one thing to boycott a single brand, but to boycott an entire agricultural product is on another level.
It is.
How did he manage to pull that off?
This is where Dolores Huerta Chavez's longtime ally and a brilliant organizer in her own right play a crucial role.
Okay.
She became the boycott director and spearheaded a nationwide campaign.
So they're taking this movement national. What did that campaign look like?
Well, they targeted key cities.
Okay.
Set up boycott houses, mobilized volunteers. They held rallies, protests, and marches, and they engaged with consumers, directly educating them about the farm workers' struggle, a grassroots movement on a national scale.
They were taking their message directly to the people.
They were.
Asking them to make a conscious choice about where their food came from.
Right.
This isn't a typical labor union tactic, is it?
You're right. Unlike most unions, the UFW wasn't bound by those restrictions. Against secondary boycotts, this meant that they could picket stores, engage with consumers, and disrupt the entire grape market.
Wow.
They were hitting the growers where it hurt the most, their profits.
Sounds like they were putting immense pressure on the entire industry. How did the growers respond to this nationwide boycott?
Well, they tried different tactics. You know, they looked for alternative markets, sending grapes to areas without active boycotts, even shipping them overseas.
Really?
But the UFW was relentless.
Wow.
Wherever the grapes went, the boycotters followed.
Yeah.
They were determined to make sure the growers felt the impact.
So this national game of cat and mouse.
Right.
But it sounds like the UFW was winning.
This pressure, combined with the financial losses, it started to take its toll.
Yeah.
By the late 1960s, the growers were feeling the squeeze, and they knew they had to do something.
So it sounds like the tide is turning in the farm workers' favor. Did the growers finally agree to come to the negotiating table?
They did in 1970.
Wow.
After years of strikes, boycotts, and protests, the major grape growers in California, including the DiGiorgio Corporation, finally agreed to negotiate with the UFW.
That's incredible.
It was a historic moment.
So after all this struggle, the farm workers finally achieved their goals. What did these agreements include?
Well, the agreements included, significant wage increases, improved working conditions, and the establishment of hiring halls controlled by the union to prevent favoritism and exploitation.
Wow.
It was a major victory for the UFW and a testament to the power of collective action.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
It seems like the Delano grape strike achieved the impossible.
Yeah.
It brought these powerful growers to their knees and forced them to recognize the rights of farm workers.
It did.
But even in victory, there must have been new challenges ahead, right?
You're absolutely right. The victory itself created some new and complex challenges.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. We'll have to take another pause here, but in part 3, we'll delve into those challenges and see how the UFW navigated the aftermath of their hard-won victory. Stay with us. Welcome back to our deep dive. You know, last time we were talking about the UFW celebrating this major victory.
Right.
But sometimes winning can create its own problems.
That's true. Yeah, you gotta be careful what you wish for. And, the very act of winning created ripples that the UFW had to navigate. Like, for example, Chavez merged the NFWA and AWOC
Right.
to create the UFWOC.
Right, he brought those two rival unions together.
Yeah, he did. And it was a power move for sure, but that consolidation of power,
Yeah.
while strategically smart, it led to some internal tensions.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. You know, Chavez had some strong opinions about their hiring practices.
Right.
And, his push for change didn't sit well with everyone.
No, it didn't. And those tensions kind of bubbling under the surface, they began to boil over after the victory.
Right.
Some members felt that Chavez was becoming too authoritarian,
Right.
making decisions without enough input from the rank and file.
So it's a classic power struggle.
Right.
Almost inevitable when you have a strong leader and a diverse group of people trying to work together.
Exactly.
What happened next to these internal divisions weaken the movement?
Well, they certainly created challenges, and on top of that, you still had the threat from the Teamsters.
Right.
They were a powerful force in California agriculture.
Yeah.
And they weren't about to disappear quietly.
We talked earlier about how they try to muscle their way in to represent DiGiorgio workers.
Exactly. Yeah. And now with the UFWOC gaining strength, the Teamsters saw them as a direct competitor.
Yeah.
And things came to a head in 1973 when many of those contracts that Chavez fought so hard for expired. The growers, sensing an opportunity, decided to sign new contracts with the Teamsters instead of the UFWOC.
So all that progress they made was suddenly in jeopardy.
It was a major setback, no question.
Wow.
Chavez called for another strike.
Okay.
And urged consumers to boycott grapes again. But the landscape had shifted.
How so?
Well, the growers were more prepared.
Right.
The Teamsters were actively working against them.
Yeah.
And public support for the boycott wasn't as strong as it had been.
So they're fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah.
What does Chavez do? How does he try to regain momentum?
Well, he knew he needed a bold move to recapture the moral high ground and grab public attention.
Oh, okay.
So he decided to embark on a 25-day fast.
A 25-day fast.
Yeah, it was a drastic measure.
Yeah.
A way to draw attention to the plight of the farm workers and to call for nonviolence amid these growing tensions in the fields.
What was the public reaction?
Well, it was a powerful gesture, and it resonated deeply with people.
Yeah.
They were drawn to Chavez's commitment, his willingness to put his own health on the line.
Right.
The fast put the spotlight back on the farm workers' struggle and put pressure on both the growers and the Teamsters.
So did it work? Did the fast achieve its goals?
Well, it did to a certain extent. It reignited public support and forced the parties back to the negotiating table.
Okay.
And then in 1975, something truly significant happened.
What's that?
The California legislature passed the Agricultural Labor Relations Act.
Wow.
This law finally gave farm workers in California the right to unionize and to hold secret ballot elections.
That's huge.
Yes.
So the Delano grape strike really helped pave the way for real legal change.
Absolutely. It's quite a legacy.
It really is. But even with this victory, I'm guessing the struggle wasn't over, right?
You're right. The UFW faced challenges enforcing the new law.
Yeah.
And there were still battles with the Teamsters and those resistant growers.
So the fight for fair treatment and decent working conditions continues.
It does.
Well, what a complex and inspiring story.
It really is the Delano grape strike. It's a testament to the power of perseverance, strategic thinking, and the unwavering belief in a cause.
Yeah, we've learned so much today about Chavez's leadership, the power of nonviolent protest, the importance of coalition building.
And it leaves us with a lot to think about. How can we apply these lessons today?
Right.
How can we support workers' rights, fight for social justice, and build a more equitable world?
Absolutely. The Delano grape strike wasn't just about grapes. It was about human dignity, fairness, and the right to a decent life. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey, and be sure to check out the American History Tellers podcast for more fascinating stories from our past.